Let me protect you from and advise you as regards being a fool or a critic. By fool I mean, for instance, playing the role of the class idiot of a young lad who I know of, and he seems to delight in being the class idiot. There's a certain sort of fitting and meaning to being such, but in some sense you're seeing everything as trivial, including your very self, which you're not. You're a child of God, and with God is held, or with love, which is infinitely greater than respect. The critic, too, spends all his time seeking out, tracking down, and highlighting what's wrong. The comedian may, like Peter Sellers, majorly laugh at the faults. The critic goes the other way and points out just how important they are, highlights them in order to draw your attention to it, and of course, in some sense, with the hope of recognizing the problem means that you'll deal with it, or it'll be solved in some way. But again, it's a practice that's incredibly depressing. It's the reverse of whatsoever's good and lovely. Think on these things. You're actually thinking on everything that's not, and bringing it to people's attention. In the case of the class idiot, the fool, they're laughing at him rather than with him, of course, which is very destructive of self-worth. They see him as the joke instead of the one who's seeking to please with the joke. You could say that the critic is not seeking to please, he's seeking to improve the world. But in a sense he gets bogged down in what's wrong in the world and overcome by it, instead of what he values and what he hopes for. Whether then playing the joker or playing the critic, depression seems to court the activities of such. We're well advised to keep away from such activities. You are neither the jester nor the critic, but hold most earnestly all that's good and lovely to its true value. You focus then on giving value to, not on destroying the evil, but on creating the good. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. I'll just tell you how I came to this. I woke during the night, this night. It's 5:20 now in the morning, Friday morning. And I dreamt of playing the part at a sort of public show, not a theatre show so much as a well, I don't know, some sort of activity. It was to make people laugh. It was to specifically play the fool to make them laugh. And it had the evil consequence of expressing the general hatred that some people suffered from, who, as a consequence, victimized me, the actor, or was about to. I found on waking I was disturbed by the dream. Oh, well, okay. It was as if I'd finished part one of the dream and went back to sleep. But then I found I had part two, which confirmed such. Second part of the act, although it wasn't on stage as such, it was seen by the crowd of the people that were being entertained in a way. They had, well, the act itself was a failure. It didn't come off as me, the actor, had intended. And I was being publicly defamed as troublesome and a fool, if you like, as a consequence. My first reaction was to wonder if this was some sort of prophetic dream, a warning, and it might be. Of course, never know. Secondly, to remember I'm not a subject to fear, because we trust in God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. There's a Christian song that goes like that. It repeats those words again and again. Interesting therapy type Christian worship chorus. It occurred to me I'd look up the death of comedians. Well, it was actually a website that goes through listing comedians that suffered from depression such that they died of suicide. Well, perhaps suicide's always depression, is it? I'm not sure. Think about that. I don't think I will. That's a bit negative. In fact, I'm aware this whole recording is in danger of being negative. May have to trim it down a bit so we don't dwell on the subject too long. I thought Peter Sellers had died of suicide, but he hadn't, apparently. Mum thought he had, and so I got that impression as truth, But it seems he didn't. I then came on to Charlie Chaplin. I knew that Tony Hancock died of suicide. Mum was very clear on that, pointed out these jokers, these comedians, very often had very tragic, sad lives. Mum herself was hooked on suicide as a possible solution to her problems. And as I've said elsewhere, I decided that no way was I going to follow this path. In a perverse way, you see, it's been an incredible blessing to me. I focused on whatsoever's good and lovely. As I say, I came onto Charlie Chaplin because it was listed there, and I thought, oh, where did he come from? Oh, he comes from London, same as Tony Hancock and so on. And, well, Tony Hancock was English anyway. But Charlie Chaplin doesn't seem to have well, it was not really diagnosable as depression. Obviously had a pretty difficult life, mind you. Must have been stresses and so on in that. To return to the beginning of this recording, don't deliberately model yourself as being the class fool, the joker, the jester, the one they laugh at. You have people laugh with you, not at you. Have a friend who avoid laughter like the plague and avoid joking like the plague. You may say this is very stiff and straight and proper and a bit stifling. I don't see Jesus as joking, I must say. There's no jokes in the Bhagavad Gita as regards Arjuna and his discourse with Krishna, God. Christians, modern Christians for the last 100 years, relatively modern, seem to want to insist that God has a sense of humour. I must say I did find that suspect. On the other hand, Judaic religions have been very heavy on accusing God of being a critic. He's a sort of critic par excellence who not only tells you what's wrong, but in some sense blames you for such. Blame being a major aspect of Christian focus, if nothing else to validate crucifixion as a necessary offset or correction or payment for the debt that the blame ascribes supposedly by God for your incompetence and errors and mistakes, especially willful ones, which of course I'm at pains to point out. Children, well, they're always committing, but this is part of being a child. I mean, naive and ignorant and pure in a sense of motive, perhaps. Well, not as time goes on, but certainly, yeah. Blame is a major thing. Contrary, really, to much of the drift of the Jesus story, which is neither do I condemn the, sin no more, which is okay. I mean, recognizes that you have sinned, but is not heavy on that account by any means, but extremely rescuing, of course. He saves us from our sins. The story is just that the Christian story, as opposed to the Jesus story, labours that his suffering is a consequence of our sin, which of course fills us with guilt and perhaps drives us into the arms of God, if nothing else for gratitude that the debt's been paid. But of course the Christian, I say of course, but it seems that the Christian practice majorly creates this sense of blame in the would-be candidate for the religion, so that then the religion offers the solution and payment for such, and the relief is so massive that the victim now the one that committed sin, supposedly, in all gratitude, turns to loving God because he has been saved from the consequences of this heinous crime. I find it a very unsatisfactory form of evangelism. It's the hellfire approach, of course, and many people have been repelled by Christianity of this form. If I may return to keeping on track, you're not going to be taking the role of the joker, the comedian, nor the role of the critic, journalistic or any other form of media. It's the reverse of whatsoever is good and lovely. Think on these things. And very hazardous too. The number of comedians listed that died of suicide, depression and suicide in particular, is legion. In fairness, show business generally seems to do that. Depression, instability in that way, and well, you could say stably bad. I mean, and suicide seems quite a major. I don't know how it compares to other professions, but it looks bad, superficially at least. And I don't recommend you do a research into such. It might be an extremely depressing thing in itself. You're going to keep away from that, aren't you? Whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things. Good thoughts.
Well, I'm concerned that this is getting a bit long, so I'll make a break here, make this part A. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.